Sige, Joy. Pwede ka na.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Ang papel kong babasahin ay Transforming Horror and Rumor into Humor. Tungkol ito sa Ilocula, the Ilocanong Dracula, street theater o dulang panlansangan, at ang politics of memory. Ibabahagi ko ang aking PowerPoint. Sandali lamang. Okay. At kaya ako'y mag-share screen. At nakikita naman siguro ninyo, ganyan na lamang siya kasi kapag ang ginawa ko ay full screen, for some reason nagkakaproblema. So sa ganitong paraan, gusto kong simulan ng aking papel, na pasensya na kayo at nakasulat sa wikang Ingles. During martial law and the Marcos regime, the street play Ilocano, ang Ilocanong Dracula, employed strategies of horror, rumor, chismis, and humor to mock the ailing president, expose the wealth and corruption of his family and allies, and indict U.S. imperialism and its support of the fascist dictatorship. It was, however, only one of the many street plays of the period, and vaudeville only one of more than a dozen theater forms explored by a huge network of theater groups performing from Cordillera to Mindanao. So ito yung declaration of martial law. Ito naman yung Ilocula picture. Okay. My research on street theater spans 5 decades, consisting of watching performances, interviews, reading scripts, and participation observation. True, in a past life, 30 years and 20 pounds ago, I was a street theater artist at ako na nga ito, yan, yung nasa gitna. No? Often playing a clown. Thus, this talk is about memory as much as it is about Ilocula, because of 3 reasons. First, because theater performances, unless captured on videotape, remain only in memory. Second, I write this not only as a scholar, but also as a poet whose work is informed by my memory of Ilocula. Third, because my essay is part of a larger project of counter-memory necessary against untruths, yung walang katotohanan, no? In autobiographical narratives, and the incessant red baiting and red bashing in books, opinion columns, and social media. All this at a time when President Duterte had ordered the annihilation of the left and the release of a list of activist terrorists to be arrested. Among the questions the paper raises are, what strategies did Ilocula and other street plays employ? So ito yung mga tanong. How can we interrogate the memory of this place, as well as martial law memoirs that celebrate self-heroism while disparaging the continuing efforts of the national democratic movement against fascism? What links current cultural production in the diaspora to anti-fascist movements in the Philippines? So tingnan natin yung Ilocula bilang horror as comedy. Ilocula had 3 versions, all informed by American vaudeville, German cabaret, and the pusong or jester. The first version, staged in 1980, so ito yun, yung unang play, was based on Leon Alejandro's article, What Are We in Power For?, which drew attention to the ballooning wealth of the Marcos family. So ito, si Madam Kula, si Lola Sepa, si Fortuna, at iba pang relatives, Tio Pio, and Tio Simon. Yung second naman, Ilocula 2, focused on the cronies of Marcos, Dr. Barreta, Prime Minister Virata, and the two-headed monster, Dr. Revolver, and Dr. Barile, si Juan Ponce Enrile, no? So at that time, so it's Ilocula is sick. Bakit? Kasi Marcos was rumored to have a mysterious illness at that time. Later on, when nalaman natin lupus. And therefore, he needed CIA injection. We find out that he became ill because of greed. He had eaten the fists of the students, the arms of the worker, the feet of the peasant, blah, 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 brains of the intellectual. Kinain niya lahat, kaya siya nagkasakit. These were all presented by gory-looking but transportable props hidden behind Ilocula's cape. And at the end of the play, the body parts come together and the people revolt. So, the play thus harnesses the conventions of horror. So ano yung conventions? Characters such as vampires and the aswang, eerie sounds, darkness, and the effects of rumor, chismis, the dictator's health bringing about uncertainty. In a play that was geared for two kinds of audience, those consciously critical of martial law and the apolitical. Why horror? As audiences, we react to horror plays in the same way that we react to horror films. In movie theaters, we scream, sigaw tayo ng sigaw. Pero alam naman natin na fully safe naman tayo sa theater, di ba? Para ka lang baliw. Kasi it's just a film. In real life, we satirize, laugh at, and destroy symbols of terror to cope with the horrors of our lives. Similarly, we can also surmise that the play's use of rumor, ano ba yung rumor? The unconfirmed, the unstable, the unfixed, mirror the government's strong grip on the media and the unreliability of news in both broadcast and print. So, ano ba yung street theater forms and strategies? So, ito ang second production no ng sa Fort Santiago. So ano pa, meron pang ibang street theater strategies. Vaudeville was only one of the theater forms. In many cases, these forms were created or explored because street theater artists needed to constantly adjust to multiple spaces, time constraints, urgency of issues, availability of the number of performance, and the need for mobility. O, halimbawa, tatlo lang ang actors mo, no time to memorize, dula-tula. So ito na nga, yung repertory company. Walang microphone, movement play, pantomime. Malaki ang stage, effigy play na tayo, or characters na may huge mask. Walang script, improvisational play. Walang time to rehearse, radio play. Find a way to adjust masks and make props portable. Engage, so ayan, engage the audience through chanting, question and answer, or participation, and finally, as influenced by Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed, encourage discussions through newspaper theater, image theater, and forum theater. But what can we learn from this study of street theater during martial law? Ito na nga. So, ito ang aking point. First, we need to remember how these plays challenge markers of order in urban spaces, transforming them into sites of dissent. Urban spaces are marked with signifiers of order. For example, sa paligid natin, sa lungsod, anong meron tayo? Signal lights that tell us when to stop and go. Meron tayong mga ganito, pedestrian lanes, diba? Diyan ka lang dapat, ay mali. Pedestrian lanes, diyan ka lang pwedeng tumawid, no? Roadblocks, no? Na nagsasabi para kung paano makokontrol ang traffic, no? Nung martial law, this was further reinforced by curfews and signs and slogans gaya ng sa ikauunlad ng bayan, disiplina ang kailangan. So, ang kalye, puno talaga ng signifiers of order. Pero ano ang ginagawa ng street play? So, street theater challenges this order. Performed during a march, which inevitably disrupts traffic, a simple song with movement entitled Awiting Revolutionario calls the attention of passers-by towards the issues presented in the rally. So yung performers, minamark naman nila ang sarili nila through organizational t-shirt and jeans. And they start by joining the march. Tapos, May makikitang crowd, lalabas sa marcha, magpe-perform, and balik uli sa march, takbo-takbo lang. So, second, we need to go back further, no? So, ito yung... We need to go further back to the pre-colonial period to look at how we can read in the structure of street theater narratives the conventions of journey, battle, defeat, death, and rebirth, and being reunited with the beloved. This is the narrative of plays such as Scholar ng Bayan and Juan Obrero, in movement plays about the oppressed peasants and workers, and even in effigy theater featuring eagles and hawks. So, ito yung Juan Obrero play. Characters struggle for better wages, land reform, free tuition, tapos para matatalo na. Pero but no, rise up uli, overcome powerful enemies, thus enabling the audience to envision themselves. In writing this paper and in remembering street theater and the epic, there are three things we need that I needed to remember, no, about memory. Una, memory is unreliable. Ito na yung tungkol sa memory. Ilang performances, sino nag-perform, ano yung detalye, ano ang real and embellished. Gaya nga nung nasulat sa isang libro, meron daw bullets whizzing close to one's cheeks, di ba? Hinanap talaga ang pisngi. So number two, what memory is depends on context, and context changes. Sinabi ito ni Jeremy Campbell. Why do we write about street theater and or martial law? Why is there a need in several autobiographical narratives to denounce the National Democratic Movement and even to red bait those who have continued to be involved in it? Number three, on the nature of narrative truth, the role of memory in the construction and reading of narratives of the self, and the way in which the narrators and writers position themselves in relation to the personal and historical past. So galing ito sa memory, narrative, and identity ni King. In framing the self as both victim and hero, what gives a memoir writer a sense of entitlement such that he/she maligns anyone who dares question his or her narrative. So I argue that as we interrogate these memories of martial law, we need to ask a more pressing question. How can we use this memory for continuing cultural production both in the homeland and in the diaspora? Moreover, how can our works best serve the current anti-fascist movement in the Philippines? So, ang sabi ng kaibigan kong si Nerissa, yung aking daw trabaho, palaging lang may memory of Ilocula. Hindi lang yung mas obvious na tulakong isang tula kay Ilocula, hindi yung maligno, pero pati na rin yung tulakong suspetsa. Kaya tatapusin ko na lang ito, presentasyon ko, sa pag-shift bilang scholar tungo sa pagiging makata. At ito yung sagot ko kasing tula sa isang artikulo na lumabas sa librong Subversive Lives ni Nathan Kimpo at ni Susan Kimpo. Sandali lang, pupunta na ako ngayon sa video. So stop share muna ako. At ngayon ay share naman uli ako. Alaala ng dulang panlansangan. Kung aking babalikan ang mga alaala ng kabataan sa pamantasan at mga dula sa lansangan, iba-iba, sari-sari ang mga alaala. Hala-hala, pasok-pasok na sa perya ng lansangan, perya ng dayuhan. May alaalang masaya, ang nasa trono ay ginawang kakatwa, ang lipun ay tinawag na perya, ginawang sandata ang pagkutsa. May alaala ng pagmamalaki, paglikha ay kay bilis, kay liksi. May maskarang kawangis na naghahari-harian at nagre-rina-rinahan. May maskarang naghihinagpis at itim ang balabal. Mga kagamitang nagpapalit hugis, pagkat laging patakbo at nagmamadali ang dulang panlansangan. May alaalang matamis, Bulaklakin ang aking damit habang naghihintay sa hagdanan ng aklatan, batang puso ay sabik sa hikayat ng pag-ibig. Hala-hala, pasok-pasok na sa perya ng lansangan, perya ng dayuhan. May alaala na nag-aagaw ang tapang at kaba, may mga balang humahagibis habang tumatakbo kapit-pisig, may pananalig sa kasama na hindi bumitiw sa sandali ng panganib. Sinusulat ko ang mga alaala sa isipan, pagkat walang alaalang buong-buo ang katiyakan at dalisay sa katotohanan. Lakit laging dapat nating tanungin, patuloy na usigin, kahit pa ang gunita. Siyang namumuhunan sa alaala para sa ginhawa at pagtamasa habang isinusugal ang buhay ng kapwa na ipinipinta na kulay pula, ay walang ibang inilalantad kundi ang sariling pagkasalat. Huwag na kaming idamay isama sa huwad na alaala. Hala-hala, pasok-pasok na. Ang gunita nga ba yanong halaga kung walang paggalang sa pasya, nilang patuloy na sa masay naglilingkod, nilang hanggang ngayoy nakikibaka. Mag-ingat sa mandurukot. Huwag lagyan ng lamat ang natatandaang nakalipas. Nalipos ng tapang, tuwa, kalinga, at kay raming halakha. Maraming salamat po.